Hi, everyone. This is John Gronsky. I am here with a friend of mine. I've been on this podcast, and his name is Trip Bodie Bodenheimer. He's a master sergeant in the Air Force, currently on active duty. And I just think the world of Bodie. I've learned a lot about leadership from talking to him. We share leadership ideas all the time. And I was telling Bodie that I'm going to be doing a webinar on Agile Leadership. So, Bodhi, I have a question for you. I really respect you as a leader, respect your leadership ability. What do you think some of the qualities of an Agile leader are, and what are your thoughts on Agile leadership?
First of all, I appreciate that. It means a ton coming from you. For me, agile leadership, I think one of the biggest qualities, I think, is adaptability. I think being able to adjust any given situation, not being fixated on doing things one certain way.
Mhm.
I think, not looking at things as threat and looking at them more as an opportunity to grow. I think, a really good example was probably, when we went through, the global shutdown that we had during the pandemic. I think I really got to see it firsthand. We had a lot of leaders who were looking at things like, we can't make this change. We can't pivot. We can't adjust. We can't move to the right or left. We're supposed to do things this one certain way. But then you had others who looked at it like, yeah, but this has created so much opportunity, especially me being at that time, I was an instructor. So being able to say, like, oh, we've got this thing called Zoom and Teams and WebEx and all these other things that we can use and tap into things that, we're now able to utilize tools such as I wouldn't be able to log in and get a camera up and running and a mic if it wasn't for that. But I think adaptability and then I think resiliency. I think resiliency is another really big one for agile leaders. Being able to bounce back from any given situation, take it as a learning opportunity, and then use those skills to help others
Yeah,
that could potentially be going through something very
yeah.
similar.
Bodhi, I love a lot of the things you're saying. And, I think one of the reasons it's so important to be an Agile leader, a
Yep.
lot of the situations you mentioned that we kind of all went through over the last few years. And as leaders, we always face a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous environment.
Hmm.
The environment in which we lead. Nothing is certain anymore. And there's certain things, we got to focus on what we could control versus what we can't control. And when I think about agility, I think
Hmm.
back to when I played football
Yep.
and how the football coach would run us through agility drills, but he would always say, you need to have a firm base. You need to keep your feet shoulder width apart. You can't have one foot too much farther in front of the other. You have to have that firm base. And I think some of the elements I think of when I think of agile leadership or how to develop yourself as being an agile leader. I think clarifying one's values and living one's values provides you that
Yep.
base.
Yep.
Cultivating trust in your organization and your team provides you that base. And you mentioned resiliency,
Hmm.
and to develop your resiliency and become a more resilient person provides you that base so that you could then respond to those volatile, uncertain,
Yep.
ambiguous things that happen. I mean, what do you think?
No, I think that's a great way of explaining it. I mean, you got to continuously grow. I think you got to have, like you said, that foundation in place.
Hmm.
Your values have to be there. You have to be willing to grow and willing to, kind of to play off of the football piece. You got to have that playbook that's got to keep expanding too. And I think, continuous improvement, both
Yeah,
personally, professionally, is a big piece of that as well. But yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think
yeah,
that's a great way.
yeah,
I like the way you describe that with
yeah.
the football.
And then, to use another analogy, since we're both military
Yeah.
people, I think of, being on a rifle range and you need to, if you're going to be firing from a prone position, you still have to have that good base established
Yeah.
when you're in that prone position.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the base, you're going to have a hard time hitting the target.
100%.
Yeah, and the same thing with leadership. If you don't have that base of understanding what your values are, living your values, cultivating trust, you're going to miss the target in terms of leading others.
Yes, and it's not just cultivating. It's not just, and I think when people look at trust as a leadership, they think of like, do they trust you as a leader? But it's you being willing to trust the people that work for
Ah,
you as well,
yeah.
and it going both ways. And the thing that's so crazy to me about trust is you can work with someone for 3 to 4 years and you can lose it in a second.
Oh,
And it can be gone in literally 1 second.
you're absolutely right.
And it's the hardest thing to regain once you've lost it.
Yes.
Someone said you could be in debt or you could lose trust. You'll get out of debt quicker than you will get
Uh,
trust back from someone.
no,
So
that is true. And
trust is big.
I think cultivating trust does take time.
Mhm.
That's not cultivated in a matter of a few days. I think it's a long-term thing, just like
Yeah.
growing a plant is a long-term proposition,
Yeah.
the care for that plant. And as you mentioned, you can lose that trust so quickly. So you have to continue to care for that trust that you've established,
Yes. Yeah.
or you're going to break it.
Yep.
Yeah. Any thoughts on in your experience as a leader? We're going to deviate here a little bit
Okay.
here, but it's okay. We're having a great
All right.
leadership conversation. Any thoughts on techniques to repair trust once you've broken it? I have some specific thoughts on this, but I want to hear what
Ooh,
you have to say about it.
that's a good question. Um, so I would say for me, in terms of because and I've dealt with people who've been in kind of in this situation, and it's easier when you're sitting there in front of someone and you're just like, hey, here's what you need to do to because it is situational based off the
Sure,
person.
sure.
But I think you got to show people you care,
Mm,
and that's the biggest thing. I think it's the what Theodore Roosevelt quote: "No one cares how much you know till they know how much you care."
absolutely.
You can lose trust with someone, or they could lose trust potentially in you. Um, it's not to say that it can't get restored. It's just it starts with caring
Yeah.
and seeing that you really care about them. I had someone. I'll be very transparent. I had someone not too long ago, to where there was an issue where they weren't trusting me, but I was actually looking out for them,
Hmm.
protecting them from potentially getting themselves in more trouble and this and this. And I was saying, hey, look, here's why I'm asking you this question, and here's why you view me as a bad guy on this. Um, I told them, for anybody out there that has watched the Harry Potter series, I was like, I am the Professor Snape to your Harry Potter.
Huh.
I'm the villain in your story, but one day there will be a point where you can look and be like, oh, he was doing that to help me out.
Yeah.
At the end of your movie, you're going to be like, oh, he really wasn't a bad guy. But so for that one, it was sitting down having a really good conversation where we both got on the same sheet of music. But just communication, caring, I think those are probably two good starters right there.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there, and you mentioned Teddy Roosevelt.
Mhm.
Another quote very similar to the one you used is that um, you know if you want people to do anything for you, you've got to be willing to do anything for them.
Yes.
And so as a leader,
Yeah.
if you want your people to do anything for you, well, hey, you've got to do anything for
Hmm.
them, and that's a way
Lead by
to
example.
cultivate that trust too. But
Yeah.
in terms of repairing trust, what I found in my experience, and I've broken trust with some of my followers over the 40-year
Hmm.
career I had in the military, and what I learned about that is first you have to admit it. You have to admit that you made a mistake. You have to admit that you either intentionally or unintentionally behaved in such a way that broke the trust.
Yep.
Then you've got to apologize. And then the admit and apologize, those things have to be done very quickly. And I think there's a correlation between how quickly you admit that you made the mistake and how quickly you apologize for making the mistake,
Hmm.
whether intentional or unintentional, is in direct correlation for your chance or probability of rekindling that trust
Yeah.
again. And then the third thing
That's
you have,
true because people do let it sit.
well, and
Yeah.
if you do, you very, very slim chance
Mhm.
of getting that trust repaired if you don't admit it and don't apologize quickly. And then the third thing, you have to show people what you're going to do differently next time so it doesn't happen
Mhm.
again. So if you then say to people, hey, this is how I'm going to change your process, this is how I'm going to change your procedure, so it's less likely that this trust is going to be broken again next time.
Right.
And you mentioned care, you have to mean it. So I think if you do those three things, really meaning it and really showing that you care about the behavior that you exhibited that broke that trust, or you care about that person's feelings, you're more likely to then be able to begin to rekindle that trust.
I feel like I'm getting like leadership. I think patience is pretty important too, because I think with that formula, I
Yeah.
think it's amazing.
Yeah.
But then I think you have to also be willing, after you've messed up or made a mistake or lost trust in someone, you have to be patient enough to allow them to feel what they're feeling,
Yeah.
and because we're a very instantaneous society now,
Yes.
to where it's like, I apologize, I messed up. Trust me, well, it's going to take time. Okay, I apologize. I told you I messed up. Like,
Right.
what more do you want me to do?
Uh-huh.
Sometimes you got to let it
You
cook
do.
for a little bit,
You
and
do.
you got to let it build up, and let them see that, like you said, those actions, they could see your actions and be like, oh, this is a one-off. They're not going to be like this. They're
Yes.
trying just to regain it. But if they see that over a sustained period of time,
Mhm.
this is a change you're willing to make, and this is a new version, I think that could help. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Hey, well, Bodie, I really appreciate having this conversation with you.
This is good.
Yeah, and again, for everyone, this is Trip Bodie Bodenheimer, Master Sergeant in the United States Air Force, the world's greatest Air Force. And Bodie, again, I'm sincere when I say I've learned a lot from you, because we've talked, we've corresponded, I've been on your podcast, I've learned a lot from interacting with you. We've had you've been here visiting me now for
We
several
broke
hours.
bread.
We've had, yeah, we
Yeah,
broke bread together.
yeah,
We had some good conversations on
yeah.
leadership, and I've learned a great deal from you today. So thank you for everything you do for our country. Thank you for being an outstanding leader.
I appreciate everything you've done for myself, and not just myself, but pretty much anyone who's mentioned your name has nothing but positive, glowing things to
Well,
say about you.
appreciate you
So,
saying that.
whenever I'm connecting people with great leaders, you're definitely the top of that list of people I'm connecting with.
Well,
So
I certainly
I
appreciate
appreciate
that.
you.
Thanks for your friendship. And hey, everyone, this is John Gronsky, Trip Bodie Bodenheimer, saying have a great day. And remember, iron sharpens iron.